Welcome to Black Hat Windows 2K Security, held February 14th through the 15th, 2001 in Las Vegas, Nevada. The following videotape was recorded live at the conference and produced by the Sound of Knowledge Incorporated. This is videotape number 1, Technical Track, Host-Based Intrusion Detection using W2K Auditing Features.
Name is going to be Macy Bergoon. He is Chief Technical Officer of Secure Labs located near Columbus, Ohio, one of my favorite states. That's where my wife comes from. So that'd be an automatic anyway. His topic today is going to be home-based intrusion detection using Windows 2000 existing technology. Macy?
Can everybody hear me? Okay. My name is Macy Bergoon, and I'm the Chief Technology Officer for Secure Labs. And Secure Labs is an information security consulting company located in Ohio. It's been in existence since 1998, and we primarily do security strategy, project management, management consulting type things for small to medium-sized companies, typically companies that are under $1 billion. The niche market that we've found is really in the manufacturing industry. My background is in information systems. I've been in the business for about 12 years. Come up through the ranks from operations to programming. My background's in applications, and in the last 5 years, security and network management. I want to thank Jeff Moss and the Black Hat people for having me out to Vegas. I don't think there's a better place to have a security conference. Although I play blackjack and I've lost a little bit of money, so I have to make up for that before I leave. We're going to talk about Windows 2000 auditing today, and specifically as it relates to intrusion detection. It's a low-cost or no-cost integrated way to get started with host-based intrusion detection. And there's some fundamental points that I want to make sure we get across in the short 90-minute session that we have. So let me get the presentation up here. We're going to talk first about the overview of what we're going to talk about briefly. We're going to talk about what is auditing and effective auditing. Move on to auditing strategy and intrusion detection strategy. We're not going to talk significantly about intrusion detection, but I do have a few slides that talk about what intrusion detection is and as it relates to Windows 2000. We're going to talk about auditing functionality in the event logs, audit policy and group policy, types of auditing, the utilities and tools that come basically with Windows 2000 or the resource kit, what to look for in the audit logs, and we'll take some questions at the end. If you feel compelled to ask questions during the session, that's great. I don't know everything there is to know about Windows 2000 security. We may find people in the audience that have to help answer some of the questions, but we'll do our best. Briefly, let's talk about some of the features that Windows 2000 has given us from a security perspective. Just an overview. We have Active Directory. And Active Directory is the core of the flexibility and scalability of the security features in Windows 2000, for that matter, for all the subsystems in 2000. It's a way to centrally manage and simplify all the administrative tasks that need to be done in Windows 2000. We have Kerberos, which has replaced NT-Landman as the default authentication protocol within or across domains. NT-Landman still exists. There's backwards compatibility to Windows NT. But to do Kerberos, you have to have obviously 2 machines that are Windows 2000. The encrypting file system, pretty straightforward. The ability to encrypt your data on your disks. Public key certificate manager. Windows 2000 bases most of its security infrastructure on public keys, and it makes significant use of certificates for most of the security features. That's a whole other day or two worth of discussion. IPsec, very simply the encryption of IP packets over Ethernet. Again, there's a session that's going to last all day today from another speaker. Enhanced VPN technology, not much to say there. Enhanced access control and enhanced auditing subsystem, and that's what we're going to talk about today. There's a couple points that I want you to leave the session with today, and they're not necessarily related to the auditing subsystem, but the concepts apply. We must understand what happens on our systems. We must understand the activity that goes on our systems, and one way to do that is through auditing. I've been in a lot of companies where they don't even do backups, right? The IT people don't back their data up. I think auditing is a similar sin in IT. You must do auditing. You must understand what your security policies are and understand what's going on your systems. The second thing that I want you to go away with today is we need to make our decisions based on factual information. And what I mean by that is that I think generally there's a trend out there in the industry, at least the companies that I've been to, where decisions get made and the information that the decision is based on is inaccurate or incorrect. I think that I could tell story after story about situations where we've tried to make decisions on security issues or performance issues or what have you, and we find out that decisions that we made early on, the information was not factual. The third thing we walk away from, hopefully, is an understanding that the auditing subsystem in Windows 2000 can be used as a fundamental host-based intrusion detection system. Okay? What is auditing? Auditing tracks the activity of users and processes by recording selected types of events in the logs of a server or workstation. Very simply put, it tracks activity. Okay? We'll provide information required to spot attempted attacks, to investigate what happened when an incident occurred, and to possibly provide evidence in support of an investigation. Okay? Without auditing, what can we expect? We can expect that finding security problems can be difficult, if not impossible. If we don't understand the activity that's happening on our systems, on our servers, we can't possibly understand if there's a security problem. You cannot fix it if you don't know about it. Once again, back to one of the 3 things that we need to leave here today with. If you have to understand what's going on, you have to have factual information, and that'll help you solve the problems that you have. Without auditing, the system will remain open or vulnerable to attack. Forward. What is an event? We talked about auditing is the ability to track events. What is an event? An event is any significant occurrence in a system that requires notification. An example would be a service didn't start, a driver didn't load, maybe information related to applications loaded on the system, whether it's virus scanning information or just general applications. Another example will be logon failures, and that relates more to intrusion detection and what we're going to be talking about today. real briefly, again, just a few overview slides here to get you in the mood. What is intrusion detection? The ability to detect inappropriate, incorrect, or anomalous activity. Sounds very similar to what auditing is, right? They are very similar. We're tracking events in auditing. We're tracking intrusions with intrusion detection, but they're both basically looking at the activity of the systems. I found that SANS Institute is a very good source for information on intrusion detection. They got some great facts out there and a lot of information. Thought I'd include the URL for you if you didn't already know about it. There's two types of intrusion detection. First is host-based intrusion detection, which involves loading software on the systems to be monitored. A lot of time use agents, software agents pushed out to the servers, and uses the log files to do intrusion detection. We're going to be talking about host-based intrusion detection with the subsystems, so we'll focus on that. Network-based intrusion detection monitors actual network traffic or the packets. Windows 2000 has no methods of doing network-based intrusion detection at this point in time. So once again, the auditing subsystem can be thought of as a fundamental intrusion detection system. Now these three blocks are very simple, but it's a point that needs to be made. An effective security management strategy relies on the relationship between the infrastructure of your systems and the security policy that exists, the requirements of the security policy. Okay? The security policy and associated controls must meet the overall objectives defined in the security policy and in the business plan for that matter. Okay? Without proper execution of the security policy, we've got nothing. Again, without basing your decisions on factual information, you won't be able to implement a proper security management strategy. A couple more overview slides here, and then we'll be into some of the guts of this. This diagram I ran across. I think it's a Microsoft picture actually, but it depicts the complexity of the networks these days. We have corporate networks that share private networks. We have corporate networks with web servers that are located at an ISP. We have dial-up. We have corporate networks with permanent connections to the internet. We have the responsibility to secure this information. These are just some of the entry points that could exist into a network. So how do we secure all that? How do we audit information on all these systems? This is another Microsoft picture. I hope they don't get upset with me. But basically, this is real good high-level stuff to understand how we come about to an audit policy and a security strategy. We need to take a look at our networks, and we need to break them up into both physical and logical building blocks. The reason we do that is because each of these building blocks potentially might have a separate security policy, a separate audit policy. A web server is different than an email server, and it's different than an internal database server. So I think it's important to get in the frame of mind that we have to really decide how we're going to put our security plan together. Using the building blocks, we have to take a look at, in this case we're looking at the logical building block called administrative authority. And the only purpose for this slide, is to show that each of these areas, these physical and logical areas, could have different strategies associated with them. Okay? Let's talk about auditing strategy. Why do we audit? Does anybody know why we audit? Money? We just talked about it briefly. We audit to understand system activity, We audit for security reasons, we audit for intrusion detection reasons, and there's a whole host of other reasons that we do auditing. You have to get yourself in the frame of mind that Windows 2000 is very complicated, and the security subsystem is very complicated as well. And you can't just go in and say, I'm going to turn auditing on, right? You have to understand why you're auditing what we're doing. Do you need different policies for different systems? We just spoke about this a little bit. The different building blocks, different parts of your network may indeed need different policies. You have firewalls, you have email servers, file servers, print servers, that type of thing. They're certainly going to need different policies for each systems. Who's responsible for log collection and analysis? I know who it is in most companies that I've been in. It's the overworked administrator that tries to do this and never actually really gets it done, right? Should it be somebody other than the administrators? Who should have access to the audit logs? Once again, I can tell you what the general rule is, but I'm not sure that it's accurate. The administrators typically have access to the audit logs, and that's it. But who audits the administrator activity? Is the loss of some audit information acceptable? What do you guys think? What's that? Depends? Depends on what?
On how critical that server is and whether or not that server needs to be up, whether or not you can afford that server to go down if the log fills up.
Okay. Anybody else? Yep.
I think it depends on how it was lost. If your data collection service failed, that's one thing, but if someone went in there and manually deleted logs, then that's something to be concerned about.
Right. Anybody else? Generally speaking, I would say, this is of course my opinion, but I think it's unacceptable that we lose information, right? My background's in manufacturing and transactions and purchase orders and invoicing and that type of thing, and I don't know anybody that's happy when you lose invoices or you lose purchase orders. Our data as security professionals is just as important to us. If it's worth auditing, it's worth making sure that we have all the information saved and secured. There are times when certain systems that are low impact that we might not care about the audit logs, but again, if it's worth auditing, we should take good care of the data. Who reviews the logs and how long should you keep them? Similar questions as before. Typically it's the administrator who reviews them. Typically there is little or no policy in place on how long to keep the logs, and I think we have to change all that. What is the escalation procedure should an intrusion be detected? How many people have policies in place to review the audit logs and know exactly your escalation procedure should an intrusion be detected? Raise your hand. 1. Right? 2. Okay. Just a few of you. I think it's something that we need to work on as security people and get some plans in place out there to understand our activity on our systems. Does the discovery of certain events require immediate action? Let's say there is an intrusion that's being detected. What happens next? Who do you call? Do audit logs need to be collected and analyzed centrally? I think today with the amount of servers that exist in companies and they're so spread out and they might even exist across geographic locations, it's a must to collect the logs and have them analyzed centrally. Same concept as before. If the data is important enough to analyze and audit, it should be collected and looked at in total. Will the logs be used for legal action? This could be another seminar in and of itself. Don't pretend to know anything about the forensic side of this whole thing, but if you need to prepare legal recourse with your audit logs, then there's a little bit more work to do than just managing your average audit logs. Effective auditing. Auditing means different things to different people. We've tried to identify what it means to us here today. It means collecting activity and logging users and processes and that type of thing. But there's really three areas that pretty much sum up auditing and how to be effective at auditing. The first is vulnerability management. Checking current configuration against a defined baseline. Typically, we do this to continually improve the baseline and to ensure best practices. We have to understand what our systems are vulnerable to. The second item is threat management, which is real-time detection of a threat or intrusion. This allows for proactive steps to be taken to protect systems or to protect specifically against a threat at hand. The third thing is collection and analysis, ability to reveal information related to use and abuse. Threat management and vulnerability management together provide a method to both identify the threat and confirm its vulnerability. With vulnerability management and threat management together, right? Say it one more time. We can understand how secure our systems are and prove a vulnerability based on a specific threat. Any threat is more serious if you know that your systems are vulnerable to that threat, right? Collection and analysis, again, you got to do it. You got to do it centrally, I think, and there's some more information further in the presentation about how we do that. Is there such a thing as too much auditing? Certainly. Certainly is. There's a direct correlation between the amount of auditing that happens on a system and how much it impacts performance on the system. It will eat the CPU of a server. Windows 2000 has the ability to log an enormous amount of information from an auditing perspective, and that's another reason basically to understand what you're auditing. Too much auditing could also hide significant events. Have you ever plowed through audit logs and got a headache after the first 30 minutes of looking at them because it's just stuff that just doesn't matter? Definitely could hide significant events if you have too much auditing turned on. The first rule to remember in auditing is restraint, right? You can't audit everything. I think the general security person wants to know about everything and wants to log everything, and we're going to log access to or log successful events and failure events, and we get crazy and we end up with too much auditing. Too little auditing obviously has the reverse effect. It's not effective. If you don't log the record, you can't track it, and therefore you can't make decisions based on it, and we've got nothing. So obviously the goal here is to get somewhere in the middle where we know what we're auditing, we know what we're looking for without having too much information that's meaningless. You want to keep it simple. You heard of that. Keep it simple, stupid. Very effective in auditing. When you need to look through those logs to find something, to detect an intrusion or to maybe see what an attack has done to your systems or trace it, you're going to be thankful that you used restraint when you came up with your audit policy. Okay, Windows 2000 audit logs. This is some just general information again. There's 3 audit logs that exist on a Windows 2000 machine: the application log, the system log, and the security log. These are just separate files that hold information related to these 3 topics. On domain controllers in Windows 2000, we have 3 additional logs: directory service log, file replication, and the DNS server log. Okay. Excuse me. Inside the logs, we have categories. First category is an error. An error can be lots of different things, but generally speaking, it's some type of loss of functionality, data, or a service failure. Something isn't working right on your computer. An error can be in any of the logs. The next is a warning, which is a recoverable event. Not immediately urgent, but still something that needs to be taken into consideration. Third is information, which could be a successful operation, could just be information regarding something that an application is doing, successful load of a driver or service maybe. And then most importantly to the topic of intrusion detection is a successful audit and a failure audit. Okay, so those are the 5 types of categories that exist inside the audit logs. Audit log properties. We got these 6 logs, and we have to have some way to manage them. We're going to talk a little bit more about group policy in a little bit here, but group policy is new to Windows 2000. It allows you to centrally manage configuration settings, basically, is the best way to say it. There are lots of different group policy objects. One of them is used in security. Group policy is the recommended method to set audit log properties. When I talk about audit log properties, I'm talking about how long to keep the audit logs and whether or not to overwrite them or not, and how big the audit logs are in terms of size. Only the application, system, and security log settings can be set via group policy. Okay, so the 3 domain controller specific logs cannot be set. Some of the settings in the log property that I just mentioned, they include override events as needed, override events older than X number of days, and do not override events, or clear the log manually, I guess. Continuing on here, generally speaking, you should never automatically overwrite the audit logs, right? It goes back to the information or the point about is a loss of audit information acceptable? And the answer to that we said was no. So we have to make some decisions as we set the audit log properties for these logs. If the logs fill up, let's talk specifically about the security log. If the security log fills up, the system will stop auditing. So you have control over the size of the security log, but at the same time, you want to be reasonable about how big you set it and how much information you log to it. So there's a couple decisions to make. Is it acceptable to have the system just stop auditing? Again, the answer to that is probably no. We want to make sure that we capture all the information possible. There is a way inside Windows 2000 to actually make the server stop operation, to actually blue screen. It's a registry setting called crash on audit fail. This is only recommended in extreme situations, but you can actually have the machine stop so that all activity halts so that you don't miss any information in the audit logs. A couple problems with this is that it could result in a denial of service to the machine. It's unforgiving. I've seen it happen before just in testing, and it took a while to figure out how to get it back up and running. There's registry values that need to be reset. An administrator has to sign on to the machine and back up and clear the audit logs, reset the registry value, and we can go on. But again, only to be used in extreme situations. The proper way to set these properties are to set the log big enough for a day's worth or a week's worth of activity. That's going to be specific to each installation, but and then back the logs up on a regular basis. So you might set the audit logs up to use 5 or 10 megabytes, and you know that on a daily basis you don't even touch that, so you back the audit logs up daily or weekly to compensate for the size. Okay. Microsoft has recommendations on audit log size. I don't know if anybody's noticed, but they have recommendations on a lot of things. This is some pretty good information here to go by generally. They say on a domain controller related to the security log, 5 to 10 megabytes is the acceptable range. Now, these numbers are just a guide because obviously it depends on the activity on your system. If you got one user connected to your domain controller, you're gonna be okay with 5 to 10 meg. File and print server on the security log 2 to 4, database server 2 to 4, web server 2 to 4. On a RAS box, they're talking 5 to 10 megabytes. Does anybody know why? Why would it be 5 to 10?
Stuff like word ILink, unauthenticated access.
Yeah, basically your AS box is an entry point into your network. It needs to be audited effectively, and they're basically saying that let's make the security log bigger there to protect ourselves. You can see that on the system and application logs, they recommend 1 to 2 megabyte, depending on, or irregardless of the server type that we have here. Yeah.
I mean, these sizes seem kind of small in terms of resources. Is there any, 10 megabytes? What's the, I mean, what difference does it make? It's just disk space, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a good question. These are just numbers to get started with. It takes a lot of logging information to fill up 10 megabytes, right? And again, it's specific to your installation. If however many users you have, you got 10,000 users on your network and they're all authenticating to one domain controller or a couple domain controllers, and that number might not be big enough. But just, when you put up your first Windows 2000 server, these are good numbers to start with.
Well, I'm just wondering about a security log. If somebody is starting to attack your system and you start getting a lot of entries, an issue of trying to file, or where you're filling up a lot of issues.
Right. Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about that in the end, but that comes back to auditing what you need to audit specifically. Okay? The event viewer. This is a Microsoft Management Console snap-in that allows you to review these logs. Allows you to do exporting and archiving of the logs as well. You can apply filters to the view of the audit log. Allows you to configure the audit log properties, and you can save off and look at later event logs. .ebt format is the native event log format. So the event viewer can open up logs that you've archived from before. Let's go ahead and take a look just briefly at the event viewer. You can see it's an MMC snap-in. The logs are listed here on the left-hand side, the 6 logs we talked about, and this, I am running Windows 2000 server here, so there's the additional 3 logs related to the domain controller as well. On the right-hand side is the audit log information. You can see the type that we talked about: error, information, warning, success and failure audits. We have the date that the event occurred, the time the event occurred. The source is basically the software that logged the event. It could be an internal Windows subsystem. It could be a separate piece of software. It's just a way to classify the event. Category is a secondary level of classification. It's not real meaningful inside the application log, but if we look at the security log real quick here, you can see that the category is a little more meaningful. Log on, log off, event records, privilege use records, detailed tracking records. So again, helps you further break down the categories of the event. We have the event ID, and that's probably one of the most important pieces of information in here. That gets us back to the description of the event and what the event really means. We have the user and the computer that the event happened on or happened to as well. We can double-click any of these events and bring up the description. This happens to be an IPsec event, and the reason I know that is because one of the ways to filter IPsec events is to look for this Oakley source, which I'm not sure exactly where that came from. Somebody else might know. But we can look at the description here, what's going on with this event, event 542, the IP security policy for Oakley specified an encryption algorithm that is invalid due to export cryptography restrictions. I'm not sure exactly what that really means. We can, however, roll through and filter out all the other Oakley events. Let's do that real quick from the event viewer here. Go to Properties, Filter. We can see all the events related to IPsec. They're all 542. I would anticipate that they're all exactly the same message that I need to deal with. Yeah, pretty much all the same information. So the filtering option is pretty cool if you're drilling down into the audit logs to look for something specific. Otherwise, we can remove the filter and look at the entire log in chronological sequence. We go back to Properties, go to the Filter tab, and restore defaults on the filter. And that'll take us back to looking at everything. Just to point out a couple ways that you can filter, we can look just for information, all events. We can look for warnings, errors, success, or failure, the categories that we talked about before. You can pretty much filter on any of the fields in the event log. Okay. Back to the General tab here under Audit Log Properties. You can see that we have information about the audit log, how big it is, and that type of thing. Down here, I have these audit logs set at 2 meg right now. And I have them set as override events as needed. Now I said, generally speaking, it's not the right thing to do, and that's true. But just on this particular box for the presentation, I wanted to make sure that I didn't stop auditing and collected enough audit information to show during the presentation. So I've left it at override events as needed. It's not a production server, so this is the simplest way to leave it. Under the action menu, we can export the log. If we do a save log file as, it will export this log file into either a .ebt format, comma delimited, or tab delimited. And again, EVT is the Windows 2000 native mode, and it's the recommended mode to archive event logs. However, if you're going to take this data to a centralized database, such as a SQL server or something like that, we could pump it out as a tab delimited or comma delimited file and import it into a SQL box for centralized management of that data. Obviously, from the action menu as well, you could clear the event log, and you can export the event log. An export of the event log is similar. It's going to export basically the information you see on the right-hand side, and it will take into consideration the filters. So you can export specific events based on the filter properties. Any questions about the event viewer? Yes. Yeah. The question was, does Microsoft still do tech notes or have more information related to these events? There's a couple resources available to you that we'll talk about at the end. The resource kit has a help file, and there's actually an access database as well that I'll show you that has some further information. As far as tech notes, are you talking like on TechNet or MSDN or something like that?
Yeah, when you go to their page, I just know
Yeah.
like tech notes, and you'll go into a more detailed description.
Yeah, I know the knowledge base has information on specific events. And I don't know if it has every event. There's thousands of them, but
Yeah, because when under like Windows and Teams and stuff, you get like anonymous logins, and those were different like processes that were running. So
Right.
it's difficult to sometimes determine what was going on.
yeah. Does anybody know if that still exists under 2000? Microsoft's site, do they have tech notes on every event? Anybody know? Okay. Yeah. Okay, so the question is, your organization's storing a lot of information, a lot of audit log information, and terabytes.
So they don't want us to store that for a certain period of time. Trying to find someone that's something
Right. Yeah, it's pure disk space, you know. Wow, that is a huge amount of audit data. I've never even heard of that before. It's amazing. So how long do you keep? 3 years. Yeah, wow. Wow. It's just pure disk space, really, at that point. Any other questions on the event viewer? Okay, back to the presentation here. Event log security. Access to the event logs is controlled to prevent unauthorized modification or viewing. There's 4 types of accounts that are used in relation to the audit subsystem. First is a local system account. It's a specialized account that allows logging to the security log. The administrator account, which we're all familiar with, server operator, and the everyone account. Specifically for each log, this is the application log. You can see the permissions here. The local system can read, write, and clear, as well as the administrator and server operator, and everyone can read and write. This is the general log that you would use if you were a developer, that you were going to use the Windows 2000 auditing in your application. You would write to the application log. This is where general application messages will go. The security log, you can see that the local system account is the only account that can write to the security log. The administrator has read and clear, and everyone has nothing. The system log, read, write, and clear for a local system and an administrator. Server operator can read and clear, everyone can read. It's general information there for you. I already mentioned this, but only the local system account can write to the security log. On domain controllers, these permissions extend to the additional 3 logs. Administrators can only manage the security log if they have the proper privileges. And there are registry keys. This is just one example. There are a few other registry keys that can be set to further prevent access to the security logs. Restrict guest access set to a 1 will prevent everyone from looking at some of the at the system. That's a policy setting? Okay. Okay, thanks. Didn't know that. Configuring audit policy. It's really a 2-stage process, real straightforward. We need to define the high-level audit policy. What events are we going to audit? Are we going to audit log-on events, log-off events, account management events? Are we looking to just monitor for specific file access or what have you? The second piece of this is what objects are we going to capture these events on? So again, goes back to understanding what your security policy states and implementing it. What's important to audit. No audit policy is turned on by default in Windows 2000. You must enable it when you install. The event categories that you can audit for include audit account log-on events. This will record the success or failure of a user to authenticate to the local computer. These are important. There's a new account, there's a new category, which is audit account management. This audits creation, modification, or deletion of user accounts. So this would be an event that you would monitor if you were looking at or monitoring the administrator. We have audit directory service access. Administrators can can monitor the Active Directory basically on Windows 2000 using this event category. It's only available on domain controllers. Audit log on events record the success or failure of a user to interactively log on to a local computer. Audit object access records the successful or failed attempts to access a specific object, such as a directory, file, or printers. This is the area that can get really that can really chew CPU up if you're going to start to do object auditing on a lot of files and directories, that type of thing. It's going to fill the audit logs up. Audit policy change, again, another great category to monitor the administrator activity. This records any successful or failed attempts to make high-level changes to security policy, including privilege assignments and audit policy changes. Audit privilege use records all successful and failed attempts to use a privilege. Audit process tracking, again, another category that can fill up the audit logs, but this is some good information depending on what you're looking for. Provide detailed tracking information for events such as process activation, handle dupes, indirect object access, and exits from processes. If you think about how this information can be useful, we could write a report. Let's say we're collecting our data in SQL Server. We could write a report to show from the audit logs all the users and what processes, what jobs they ran on a system for any given time period. So we could see in detail by user what jobs were ran on our systems. Audit system events records any events that affect the security of the whole system. So there's not much that we'll miss here in Windows 2000 if we want to apply these categories.
Can you give some examples of things that would be logged in the audit system events?
Well, we can go look at the system log. And have a look. The question was some examples of events that would be logged under the system. We can start at the top here. We have some DHCP events. We have a warning for Windows. The time service was not able to find a domain controller. The host cannot be an ACS Active Directory stuff here. SNMP information, DHCP server, WINS errors, WINS information. The browser is forced, so elections on the browser. Perfect example is really startup and shutdown events, right? So that brings up one point that's interesting about all this. Whenever I go into places, you look at my my system log here, right? And it's filled with errors and warnings. Okay, I have put forth no effort to clean up the DHCP errors and the WINS errors and stuff on this machine. I realized at the last moment that I needed to have Windows Server loaded on here, so I've not cleaned up any of these errors. But if this box was in production, this would be a terrible looking log filled with errors and warnings like this. It should be part of any administrator's duties that when they install Windows 2000 to make sure that there's no errors that exist in any of the logs. To be able to implement and configure audit policy settings, you must have the following privileges. Generate security audits, allows the process to make entries to the security log. And managing auditing and security log, which allows the user to specify object access auditing options. Okay. Let's talk group policy a little bit here. Allows centralized management of Windows 2000 computers. Domain group policy will override local policy. There is a hierarchy that exists in group policy, and we'll talk about that in a second. Group policy objects are a collection of configuration settings consisting of computer configuration and user configuration. The computer configuration is applied when the system boots. The user configuration is applied at the time the user logs on. Okay. And Windows 2000 reapplies these group policies at specified intervals. So we can set a global security policy, and by using group policy, push that out to multiple servers and workstations. It was definitely a downfall of Windows NT, and they've made up for that in Windows 2000.
Domain controller not being able to be set by a group policy, how would that end up just being a manual reconfiguration of those policies if any of those policies should change?
Are you referring to a few slides back when we talked about group policy? Group policy cannot push audit log properties down to those three other servers. Group policy still applies in many other ways to domain controllers, but it can't push the size of the audit logs and that type of things to domain controllers. The hierarchy of group policy is the local computer group policy is applied first, then site-linked policy, then domain-linked policy, then organizational linked policy. Active Directory is very complex. I don't know if any of you figured that out yet or not, but group policy is, you really have to plan this out and really have to think through it, because these settings can overlay each other, right? So you might think you have a certain group policy in effect, but based on configuration at these different levels, you might find that your effective setting is not what you believe it to be. Okay? So it's all in planning. Group policy object settings can conflict. The last applied group policy wins. Okay? Settings can be set to not configure. This is one saving grace, I believe, in this whole thing. If a setting inside a group policy object is set to not configured, it will not overlay the previously applied group policy. Okay? This could be a whole session as well, just on group policy. It's pretty complex. Configuring object auditing. So now we're talking about, it's the specific files and objects that we can audit. Each object has a security descriptor associated with it. It details the groups or users that can access the object and the types of access granted to the groups and users. This is called the discretionary access control list. Just again, some information about how the object maintains its security. Each security descriptor also contains auditing information called the system access control list. Okay? So between these two access control lists, auditing and security information is kept on every object. To enable auditing on a file or folder, it must be an NTFS formatted file system. Must specify the files or folders to audit. Must specify the action that will trigger the audit. So in other words, are we going to log an audit record if the user reads the file or displays its properties, or there's a half a dozen, well actually there's probably a dozen or more events that will trigger an audit record on a file or folder. We'll look at them here in a minute. Must be logged on as a member of the administrator group to enable auditing. Types of folder access. I'm not going to read these to you, but we'll display them here. You have them in your book as well. These are the different types of events that can be logged. File access, very similar types of events. Okay, let's go and set some auditing on an object here. I have a file in my documents called a password list. And basically the way you enable auditing on the file is you right-click Properties, go to the Security tab, click Advanced, and then you'll see the Auditing tab. And we can add who we want to audit related to this object. Let's just say we want to audit administrator activity. Here are the different types of access that we can monitor for. Traverse folder and execute file, list folder, read data. Again, I won't read them all to you, but there's an extensive list of types of access we can monitor for. Yes?
Do the object auditing properties stay the same between the different flavors of Windows 2000, Professional Server and Advanced Server?
I believe so, yes. So normally we would monitor for the failed event, but there's times when we would want to see the successful events as well. So I'm going to just enable successful events here real quick. I'm going to do all of them. All right, so we'll say OK. You can see that now we have the administrator set up in auditing. So only the administrator will be audited here. I mean, there's a fine level of granularity here that Windows 2000 provides. You can audit specific users differently for specific objects. So now at this point, whatever I do to this file, whether I open it, check its properties, or rename it, that information will be logged in the event viewer in the security log. Should be anyway. So you see these events here related to that object access. Okay, now the thing to point out here is I did a couple things to that file, right? Look at the amount of object access events that got logged based on that. 560, 562s mean different things, but you can see that, you know, all I wanted to know was I opened the file, read the file. So the amount of the actions that I checked all those check boxes, right? That caused these pieces of information to be logged in the audit log here. So you really have to understand specifically what you're looking for. You're going to be weeding through hundreds and hundreds of records, maybe thousands of records related to object access. Yes? Yeah, the event will still be, the question was, will filtering eliminate some of these events? It won't eliminate them being logged, but it is a way for you to sort through them. Yeah, absolutely, you could do that. But in an effort to not log information that we don't really need, the better you understand it, the better off you're going to be when you select the things that do need to be logged. Okay? We've been here. This is what we just performed, setting up auditing on a file or folder. I won't read it to you again, just the steps to set up auditing. Some other things that you can audit with the Windows 2000 subsystem, auditing subsystem. We're not going to talk about these in great detail, but you can audit printers. You can audit the print from a printer, the management of the printer, the management of the documents, read permissions, change permissions, and take ownership. So there may be a reason, I don't know how valid it is to audit every time somebody prints to a printer, but you can do that if you want to. You can audit the registry, and there's, as you see there, there's a decent list of the things that you can audit in the registry. This again could be another session where we talk about the registry, but the information's there if you need to do that. Auditing of DHCP in the DHCP server log. It's enhanced in Windows 2000, allows you to specify the directory path of the DHCP logs. I think in NT you couldn't really specify the name of the file, or at least not the path. You could specify the maximum size restriction in megabytes for all the audit logs managed by the DHCP service. You can specify an interval for writes to the audit log before checking disk space. I'm not sure, but it would seem that the DHCP auditing subsystem was written by somebody different than the rest of the auditing subsystems. There's a whole set of rules here that are different, which I can only explain by that. But specify minimum disk requirements to continue DHCP auditing, and disable or enable auditing for DHCP. Auditing of message queues. Again, this just real high level stuff. You can audit message queues for a single message queue object. One important piece of information to understand about message queues is audit message queues are only created when the queue is accessed, not each time a message is received or sent. I don't know much about message queues, but you can audit them if you like. Auditing IPsec, again, just very limited information on this right now in the audit logs. You can filter on Oakley that we did at the beginning of the session here. And I guess you want to go to the IPsec class that's in progress right now this afternoon if you want to know more about that. The Windows 2000 Resource Kit has some really good utilities to manage the audit logs. Just real quickly, error and event message help file that's out there. I want to show that to you. It was like finding some diamonds in the rough when I found this. Basically has information about all the errors and all the event IDs inside Windows 2000. For example, if we wanted to look at event 538, which happens to be a log off event, we can search for it in the help file. User log off tells you the names of the fields that are in there and the event type. Now the information is somewhat limited, but you can at least get a handle on what generally is going on. If we wanted to search for an event ID of 528, which is a log on, we could do that as well. Successful log on. So the event record indicates that a new log on has occurred. There's lots of information in here, not just on event IDs, but different error messages and things. So it's real good, a real good tool in the Windows Resource Kit. There's a log event.exe utility that allows you to add entries to the event log. CyberSafe Log Analyst. I'm going to demo this to you here in a second. This is a new tool, I believe, with Windows 2000. It allows you to do event log analysis and reporting. Windows 2000 events.mdb. This is an access database that lists all the events for the system, security and application logs. Very comprehensive list in an access database so you can do whatever you need to do with it. Audit Pol is a command line utility to allow you to set audit and change audit policy. Elog dump, event log dump is an event log query tool. you guys can play around with these things in your spare time. Dump event log is another just event log dump utility, but it does have filter capabilities. Uptime.exe is an event log utility to determine availability, reliability, and current uptime. This is a great example of the things that the idea that I try to get across in this session, which is you've got to understand the activity of your system. If you collect your audit data and it's the right data and you store it centrally, you then have really a data warehouse of your system activities. It's unbelievable the things that you can do with it. This uptime tool and the CyberSafe analyst tool is a couple real good examples of the types of things you can do with it, and I'll just show you here in a second. I'll show you now. The next slide here. The uptime tool is kind of neat. It's just a very simple utility on the resource kit with there's some parameters. I'll display the parameters here for you. Just a few parameters. The most relevant parameter is the /s parameter. And it shows you all the times that the system was started up and shut down. Okay. Calculates at the bottom that the system availability has been 93.8941%. Total uptime 37 days, total downtime 2 days, 14 reboots. It's real good information. It's a classic example of specifically going in, and if you're a data warehousing person, specifically going in and mining certain pieces of information out of the data warehouse, right? We can pick startups and shutdowns. We could pick log-ons and log-offs. We could pick other correlations that might be important from an intrusion detection perspective, and you can write utilities or query based on certain events. So that's a real good example of use of the event logs. The other tool that's pretty neat is CyberSafe Log Analyst. And again, just to further substantiate some of the neat things you can do here, they've done a real nice job with this utility. It allows you to take the current event log and cut the live local event log here basically on the property. So we're going to pull in the event log as it stands right now. And there it is. And we're going to analyze it. And basically adds it to the tree over here under Analyze Logs, which you can see I've had a few over the last month or so. And then we can run reports. And the reports are activity by target, activity by user, summaries, virus activity, log-on summary reports, type of thing. Let's just pop open a couple of these. Activity by user. There's only 2 users that have used this machine, so the administrator and the system. So we'll preview this report here. Oh, actually, I was playing around last night. I got my name and test and guest as well. So you can see here that it tries to summarize the users and the amount of times that the event records were found, and talks about the types of events that are in here. The audit log has been cleared 4 times, audit policy changes once, authentication package added, domain change. Next page. You can see here's our access to the password file right here. General browsing, failed log on account. So basically you're in here taking this event log information and turning it into something other than just a big list of events that are not correlated in any way. Okay. Several reports in here that are of use. It's a pretty good tool. Okay, another tool that comes with the resource kit is, I think it's the resource kit. Maybe it's Windows 2000 itself. Is the security configuration and analysis tool. This talks about the ability to mass set or mass update security policy as well, and it'll actually perform the vulnerability assessment that we talked about before, and it help you establish a baseline for for your system so that you can determine if things change over time. I thought I'd show that to you as well instead of going over the picture there. It's a snap-in as well. There we go. Okay, so that's the group policy object. Down here at the bottom is the security configuration and analysis tool. And basically what you can do here is there's templates that exist out there that you can draw a baseline to your existing configuration based on a template. So let's try this once. We'll open a database. Got one out here called baseline. So I'll open it. And then I'll import a template. And let's go for a secure domain controller. You can see there's several out here that are defaults. I'm going to go for a secure domain controller. We'll implement that. And then we'll say, analyze the computer. And basically it's going through and taking what Microsoft says is a configuration for a secure domain controller, and it's going to set a baseline to where my system's at today. And it's a pretty decent utility to get an idea what Microsoft recommends compared to where you are. Just give it a second here. Okay. Here's a good example under audit policy. Microsoft says that audit account logon events should only be set at failure. I have them set at success and failure. Account management, success and failure, I have them both set properly. So you see the red X over here tells you the areas that my configuration doesn't meet the recommended template configuration. And you can do this for all areas of the system, from privileges to other local policies. Okay, it's a pretty neat tool. It does some other stuff too. You might find it useful. Okay. Managing the logs. You can use the event viewer to export the current view. We talked about that. It will use the current filter settings. If you archive a log in log format, you can reopen it in the event viewer. We talked about that. One thing that you need to know, if you're going to use the .evt file format and you're going to manage the logs centrally on another machine, the same applications or the same support files have to exist on the machine that you're going to monitor on. What happens is the event ID is stored as a number inside the file, and the description is stored in the support files. So any applications that are on the server where the information was logged need to be installed on the machine that you're going to centrally manage the logs on. There is a way, Microsoft has a tech note on it that documents how to find the support files in the registry by application, by event log, to allow you to copy those files over to the central machine that you're going to do the management on. So it's something to be aware of. When you archive a log file, the entire log is saved regardless of the filtering options. The sort order is not retained when the logs are saved. We talked about comma delimited and tab delimited. Archiving has no effect on the current contents of the logs. Here's some tools that I found out there that will do log monitoring. I've used just one or two of these. RippleTech Logcaster I'm the most familiar with. It's a pretty decent utility to centrally manage the event logs, and it does all the dirty work for you. That's in your book for you. Event log targeted, quickly, the event log cleared at random is a problem. Generally speaking, one way to handle this situation is you don't want to just see random entries in there that the event log was cleared. It's suspicious. We want to take a look at having a paper log by each server, and anytime that an administrator clears the event log, they should write an entry on the paper log as well, so that you can correlate clears with somebody actually being at the console as opposed to somebody clearing the event log trying to hide something. Event log flooding is a problem. There's utilities out there that are meant as denial of service attacks against the event log, used to overwhelm the administrator. Sophisticated hackers can write to the security log as well. Monitoring the security logs must monitor users that have admin rights. I made reference to this a couple times using the account management and some of the other event categories. Somebody needs to watch the administrators as well. What to look for in the audit logs from an intrusion detection perspective, to watch for tampering and policy changes, restarts or event ID 512, shutdowns, audit policy changes 612, time changes 577. The correlation that needs to happen when you analyze the log is going to be up to the individual user. There's lots of specific things that you could look for with restarts and shutdowns and time changes. The hacker could attempt a time change to cover up events in the event log. Policy should exist to manage the audit logs. We talked about this a little bit. Look for the clear of the audit log, which is event 517. Proper policy should make this event rare. It should not be normal policy to clear the event log just anytime anybody feels like it. Log on and log off successfully. 528 and 540. Windows 2000 added a 540. NT used a 28. 540 is a network log on now, and they've separated it. I won't read the different types to you, but on the event record there is a type code that specifies what type of a log on it was. Log off uses event ID 538, so you can run queries over your data warehouse, over your centralized audit logs, to look for log on, log offs. There's one small problem with that, is that Windows 2000 suffers from the same bug that NT did, that 538 events are not always logged. And that seems to be a problem just with interactive log-ons at this point in time.
Do you
Yes.
happen to know if, when you're using the utilities on the last slide, if it shows the manual clear, or is the manual clear only if it's done interactive? If the log's clear when you're interactive?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that for sure. I'm not sure if there's just one event for a log clear, or if there might be multiples or multiple types. I'm not sure. Log on and log off unsuccessfully. Each of those events represents their description, so there's many of them. The most common is a 529, unknown username or bad password, disabled accounts, accounts locked out, log on outside the time frame, etc. Event ID 534 is insufficient rights to perform an action. 537 is a general failure. Unexpected errors occurred during log one. The point to make here is that we can watch for intrusions in the event logs by monitoring event IDs 529, 537, and 539. That's not meant to be an inclusive list, but generally speaking, we can do some analysis based on those event IDs. I skipped over the slide on the SQL Server, just we're running out of time here. Just was going to show how we do centralized management. If all else fails, we'll take a quote from William Shakespeare, and if you wrong us, shall we not revenge? Any questions? Yes?
Are there any utility supplies that will go through the log, current log, and email
Yeah, the question is, are there utilities that will go through the log and email you based on specific events or what have you, right? There are third-party utilities that will do that. The list that I brought up there, some of those utilities can perform emailing and that type of thing, but nothing that comes with 2000 that I'm aware of. So it's a third-party application that you have to buy. Any other questions? Yeah. Yes.
As far as the auditing code, under Windows NT, you couldn't ever print those markers out unless you had the resource kit. Is that the same under Windows 2000?
You can export the audit logs and print. You're gonna end up, yeah.
Or you could save them as files and things like that, but you never print them.
Yeah, I don't think you can still print them. I think you have to export them as a common delimited or something like that to print them, yeah.
There's actually an entry on each of the individual tabs now that lets you just export that individual record you're looking at to the clipboard.
Okay. Did you hear that? He's saying that there's a way to copy the contents of an event log record to the clipboard and then print it.
And I have one other question. As far as the object access and that sort of thing,
Yes.
if you had a password file or something like that, that you only wanted to know if others than like a specific list of people accessed it, did you have that capability?
Yes. Yeah, you can, the level of auditing is down to the user and specific event on there, so you could certainly do that.
So you could include to say, I don't want to know unless other than these folks. You know what I mean?
Oh, I see what you're
Like if
saying.
you and I had access to a password file, to prevent verified.
You could do that,
Um,
you could do that by group. I think you'd have to set up a group and you would,
you could say, if it's other than this particular folks.
no, you would do it the other way. You would include the groups that you want to audit.
Oh,
Yeah. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I was just gonna make a comment that there is in the Win32 API, there's this event that fires every time an event is put in the event log. It turns out, so it means they have these hooks in there so that people can actually program pieces of code and
Do those
at
things.
once, and it turns out that's why some people can easily write these utilities actually.
I see.
So each time, you can put this little function in it that waits, and each time you then it gets your function, and then it can check for a certain type and grant us an email or
I see.
whatever you want.
Very good. Very good. Yes.
Required to monitor like workstation servers. Is there a way to put in the range of IP addresses so that each and every one two different range of IP addresses?
Yeah, so the question is, can you select machines to monitor based on IP address? Some of the third-party utilities can do that. For example, I'm familiar with Logcaster. Logcaster uses NetBIOS and brings up IP address ranges and a list of computers to audit, and you can manage them that way, certainly. But it's probably looking at a third-party application to do that. Anybody else? Yes?
Do you know if the log event utility would work under NT4 as well?
I believe that utility was there under 4, yes. Anybody else? Thank you. It's been fun.